Welcome back to What She Said. We know that everyone responds differently to fitness and nutrition, and our next guests have created personalized fitness and nutrition plans that can align with your goals and lifestyle, and it all starts with a DNA test. Welcome GeneBlueprint CEO Paul Mercante and Product Manager Cole Kirshner to What She Said. Nice to have you guys here. Now, you two believe that our genes don't have to determine the size of our genes, as it were. So tell us the history of GeneBlueprint and what you do exactly.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us on the show. And so essentially, we're personalizing fitness and nutrition by utilizing your genetic profile to understand what best works for you. So we all know that we're all different. So a one-size-fits-all approach is not necessarily going to work for everybody. So what we're looking to do is tap into your genetic profile to determine what works best for you and gives you the best chance for success.
So let me ask you, what indicators would give you those answers in our gene profile?
So a good example of this would be carbohydrate tolerance. That's one of the things we test for. So there's certain pathways within our body that allow us to metabolize carbohydrates, break them down, and use them for energy. Now, these pathways are regulated by genes, and people have different variations of these genes. So some people might be really good at metabolizing carbs and using them for energy. Other people maybe not so much. They might be really slow metabolizers of carbohydrates, and they might not get the most benefit from a high carbohydrate diet.
So, okay, we've isolated that certain genes determine that, but how about things, because we hear this all the time, what about things like your metabolism? What about things like your hormones? How much does that influence the DNA indicators?
Yeah. So that's a good question, and it's always a good point because really there's two components to what we do. There's the genetic factor, and then there's the environmental factor. Okay. So now a general rule of thumb is it's 50-50, but for each individual output, it's actually it can vary. So if we take something like your height is probably 80-85% genetic. The 20% would be your nutrition at a youthful age. But then if you take other aspects, it would be less. Like if we're trying to measure someone's strength capacity, only 15% of that would be genetic, and the rest of it is trainable. So what we're trying to really make people knowledgeable about is, okay, this is our options, and this is our trainability for that, and this is our growth potential.
So, okay, we signed up to do this because we're so fascinated. Let's take our listeners through the process. The first thing, you order a test. You order the test. And the test kit arrives, and we did it. And I screwed up the first one because there were two of them. So you had to send us another one. But that was easy, just a swab in the mouth, send it back in the envelope. And then what happens when you get it back?
Yep. So we receive the sample in Hamilton. We're a Hamilton-based company. We have a lab in Hamilton where we do all the processing. So we extract the DNA from the cotton swab sample, and then we genotype all your genes, and then it goes through our machine learning algorithm, and then it outputs your responses to everything. So through a lot of statistical analysis, we can determine what genetic variants you actually have and how they affect your responses to foods and exercises. So once we have all that data available, it goes on the online portal, so you have access to it. So you can log in with their username and password, and then you get access to the meal plan, the workout plan, and your responses to all the different exercises and foods.
So what you say you can go on and review the genetic data? So for an average person like me or Kate, if we went on to review and we didn't have you to interpret it for us, what would we find out about ourselves besides metabolizing carbohydrates?
Yep. So we really break it down so it's really simple. Most of our scores are out of 100. So the carbohydrates, slow metabolizer, high metabolizer, 0 to 100. We also do caffeine sensitivity, your endurance, your strength, your response to HIIT training. Lactose intolerance is another good one. Your morningness is a really cool one. So that's your chronotype. So are you more likely to prefer mornings or evenings? And based on that, you can kind of make a lifestyle intervention to maybe try to work out in the morning if you're more of a morning bird.
So people are really I'm a morning person. I wake up as soon as it starts getting light, and that's it. And at night I'm just chilling. That's it. So based on the genetic prediction scores, you create the personalized fitness and nutrition plan. But explain to us about gene scores? What's a good score? What's a bad score?
Yeah, so there's really there's no such thing as a good score and a bad score. So you're just we're empowering you with the knowledge of what you are, so you can make better decisions. So if I could just give a real life example, so we have a score that would be joint health. So irrespective of what your joint health score was, whatever your goal was, if your goal was to run be an Ironman or run a marathon, if that was what your goal is, your goal would never change. How we would get you to achieve that goal, we would take a different intervention. So there'd be a high level of cardiovascular activity to achieve a goal of running a marathon. So a recommendation would be very similar to you should spend 80% of your time on a bicycle or in the pool on less impactful surfaces, so you can preserve your cartilage in the score of a joint health if you had low joint health. So this is where the personalization and the customization of someone's fitness or nutrition program really comes to life through this mechanism.
So can you tell us about the research that supports DNA, diet, and fitness?
Yeah, so there's a lot of research out there. Our chief developmental officer of all of our workout plans, he actually published the first study showing the efficacy of a DNA-based training regime. So we took a cohort of athletes that were on a workout that wasn't following their genetics and a group that was following their genetics. And those that followed their genetics had double the performance gains. So that was measured with like a vertical jump and performance on an aerobic bike. So following a training regime that's tailored to your genetics, it's been shown to improve performance in the gym.
Have you got a success story that really stood out to you?
Fortunate for us, we've commercialized our product since January, and we have a bunch of professional football teams. We have a couple fitness institutions that are working with it. So we have testimonials that are well available on our website, and people achieving different PRs just by changing little aspects of their training regimen, or even if it's their nutrition plan, they're just feeling better. They have more energy and whatnot. So we're actually conducting a randomized clinical trial right now with Hamilton Health Science in partnership with a couple of our industry partners to measure metabolic syndrome and also compliance and engagement if individuals had the advice of genetic-based interventions.
So, for example, for the diet part, or what people should be eating, how is it just the carbohydrates that would change per person, or what about protein, or is it how often they eat, or?
Yeah, so we haven't really dialed into meal timing yet. I'm sure like new research will come out where we can dive really deep into that. But what we really focus on is what's your ideal macronutrient ratio. So macronutrients are your carbs, your fats, and your proteins. So based on your carbohydrate score and your fat score, we can come up with the ideal macronutrient ratio based on your goal to help you get the most amount of energy out of the food that you eat.
Okay, so you want to predict our results to see how well we know ourselves.
Yeah, that'd be a fun, interesting exercise.
Right. What do we do?
So I would just be curious to ask you how you felt you reacted to carbohydrates and what your carbohydrate
love carbohydrates.
Whether you love them and you should be, that's a whole different paradigm. Everyone loves pizza. Yep. So our mechanism of action when we measure carbohydrates is we look at how it affects your insulin levels, if you have a spike or if you don't have a spike, and if you have a crash. So we can tell an individual how tolerant they are for carbohydrates.
Well, I think I probably, because I know if I cut down on my carbohydrates, then I do lose weight. So I would say react negatively to them.
So you would have a low carb score. So on a scale of 0 to 100, you should fall under the 20. You would believe that yourself would fall under 25%.
Okay. All right. Yep.
I think I probably have an average reaction to them, but I love sugar. So if I have sugar, I will go up and then I will crash and start to shake. So yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so the other interesting ones is we can figure out, how fast you metabolize caffeine.
She lives on caffeine.
I used to. I'm getting better at it now. I'm actually getting better at it. I try only to have 2 sort of small coffees.
Yeah, a lower metabolizer of caffeine.
But if I gave it up, I would have a constant headache. And giving up sugar is the same.
your body would go into a little bit of a shock.
Yeah.
Well,
withdrawal.
anyway, you are both going to be back in a few weeks to review our genetic results.
We'll present the results, and we'll field all your questions about
Cool.
who you really are
Oh.
genetically.
I don't
Dive
know
in
if I
deep.
want the answer to that one. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
This is What She Said, and we'll be right back.